All right, so Lois has gotten her Superwoman powers back. Superboy-Prime returns again with some other Superman friends. We finally find out how the DC supervillains escape the Phantom Zone and join the DC tournament. And then there is some key information here that is discovered from the Fortress of Solitude. Now, this is all here coming out of Superman issue number 31 and 32 here, which is a tie-in to DCKO by Joshua Williamson. So what happens here is that this kicks off before the tournament started, where Superman heads over to the Fortress of Solitude. Now, Superman goes to talk to his father because the main thing here is that he has questions about Krypton. He has questions about Darkseid. He has questions about this King Omega. To which, by the way, Jor-El is absolutely no help. He just keeps on saying, there is no knowledge of King Omega. There's no knowledge of this in my records. But then Clark does ask this question. It's like, is it possible that not all of Kryptonian history was within the rocket? To which Jor-El responds back and says, some information was deemed illegal, and there are pieces of history that were never transcribed, memories that were passed down from generation to generation, ancestral knowledge, life stories that did not need to be filled. But that was all lost when Krypton was destroyed. So then Clark asks this question. He's like, I know that you're not really you. You're just a simulation the rocket provided to give me history and comfort. So I'll understand if you can't really answer this question. But Father, why did you only save me? To which Jor-El responds back and says, because your mother and I loved you and wished to save you. To which Clark is like, well, what about a larger shuttle? In which Jor-El says space travel had been illegal on Krypton for generations. Knowledge from outside our world was forbidden. Because of this, I was forced to build your rocket with limited resources and also in secret. But then Clark is like, well, what if you had unlimited resources? To which Jor-El says, I have no knowledge of that. So Clark's like, Father, if you could have had the help and the resources and the ability to build more shuttles, what would you have done? To which Jor-El responds back and says, I would have saved everyone. And that right there is the internal conflict with Superman, and really the internal conflict that is going to continue to play here throughout the entire DCKO saga. So with that, Clark takes off. In the ensuing days here, Clark spends time with his family, spends time with Lois, spends time with Ma and Pa, and then he heads out here for the tournament. Now, the plan for the people that were left behind was that everyone would be evacuated here with these super ships. But right before they were about to exit the atmosphere, Lois gets this idea. And what she does here is that she takes a detour and she herself heads to the Fortress of Solitude. And then she starts to ask her own questions. So initially here, she's greeted by Jor-El. How can I help you, Bride of Kal-El? But Lois, she doesn't really trust Jor-El that much. And of course, she knows that he's a simulation, but either way, she doesn't trust him because of their time that they spent in space together with her and John back in the day. So she's like, I'm not really here to ask you for help. I'm here to interview you. Tell me about Darkseid and the heart of Apocalypse. But then once again, all Jor-El says is, I have no knowledge of this. It's not in my records. But then Lois is like, yeah, I know in your archives you don't have the information, but when you're a reporter, you learn that finding out what is missing can help lead you in the right direction. Certain bits of information were illegal on Krypton, I get it, but where are the records on what was illegal? You had to know what was illegal to forbid it, right? To which Jor-El is like, there is no knowledge of this information. But then Lois, she starts pleading. She's like, listen, your son right now is in the fight of his life. Frankly, doing what you could not, saving his world. You must know something. Anything about the heart of Apocalypse, you must help him. But then what happens here is that Jor-El basically starts to glitch. He's like, there's no knowledge. There's no knowledge in our records. There's no knowledge in my records. And then Jor-El just like pieces out, right? But then what happens next here is that the simulation for Lara, she pops up. And what she says first here is, when we sent Kal-El away, I hoped that he would find happiness, safety. I hoped that he would find you. To which that kind of leaves Lois a little speechless because she's like, I don't really know what to say. We haven't really talked before. But then Lara's simulation mentions, and yet your questions triggered my program, my own memories tucked away within the fortress. My role on Krypton was a historian. I worked on crafting the archives that were included in my son's shuttle. And while there are no records of a dark side, all the worlds Krypton encountered had a legend about a destroyer, the end of all things, a dark Omega presence that wanted to control all. The final god. Our scientists hope to create a champion to stop him, to change the future. But for there to be an Omega, there must also be an Alpha. And I believe that Doomsday was created to be that. His powers of recreation and rebirth are in direct opposition to everything the King Omega is. And remember now, Doomsday himself has some sort of an inkling to this, right? Because that is the reason why he had originally showed up as Time Trapper before to Superman and said, Superman, you gotta kill me so that I can become, basically go into my ultimate form. And he warned Superman, he told him that, like, if you don't do this, then everyone that you love will die. Things will get worse. And what we're seeing right now is the worst happening here with Darkseid. So the very thing that Superman was trying to avoid is the very thing that he should have done in the first place. And I'm wondering how that's gonna play out here, if he's gonna have to ultimately do it anyways. But then jumping back to this conversation here between Lois and Lara, Lois mentioned, she's like, Doomsday is the Alpha. Clark needs to know, but he needs to talk to you, because she knows that, like, that's the only way that he's gonna actually, like, kill Doomsday if that's what he needs to do, right? So she's asking the question, she's like, how the hell am I gonna get you to him? But of course, here in typical fashion, because this is usually what happens in stories, right? Like expected, that is when someone comes in and crashes her party. Now, initially, she's like, Clark? And when she goes over to see who it is, Superboy-Prime is like, it's me, Mario. No, I'm kidding, but he's like, nope, wrong Clark. Now, Superman had already filled in Lois here, or what had been happening here, or his adventure with Superboy-Prime. So she thought that he was stuck in the future. So Superboy-Prime lets her know, he's like, I managed to hold off Darkseid's army, the Darkseid Legion here, but there were ultimately too many of them. But he does have some information. He's like, I know what happened to the rest of the Legions, all the Legions, and I gotta tell Superman now. To which Lois is like, oh shoot, like, you don't know? She's like, I gotta also talk to him too, but he's gone right now. But then once again, before that conversation could continue on, there's this big explosion that comes through. And when we look and we see who it is here, it is Sunboy, part of the Darkseid Legion. And he mentions, he's like, nice try, Superboy, but we know Superman and the Justice League are trying to capture the heart of Apokolips. Darkseid is coming. We've already won. It left you to die. But then Prime is like, I'll stop you, Sunboy. To which Sunboy is like, how? You're alone. No one can save you. To which Prime is like, there was something that you forgot about. To which Sunboy is like, and what's that? And then Prime's like, the last page reveal. This man and his fourth wall breaking. And it's in that moment here where we see Lois, and she's like, what the hell? And then Prime says, you blasted her with your sun powers, you dork. Superwoman is back. Now, real quick, just to explain this here. So Sunboy, his ability here is that he generates yellow sun radiation, which can fuel Kryptonian powers. So in this particular situation, when he blasted Lois, then she was able to get her Superwoman powers back. Very simple, right? But I hope that helps, just in case you weren't aware of the situation or what happened. So in this next moment now, naturally, what does Superwoman do? She kicks the crap out of Sunboy, and Prime is all too happy and cheering her on too at the same time. But then in the aftermath of that, Lois is asking this question. She's like, my powers, I got them back, but also for how long? Which is when Prime is like, probably not long enough, Lois. After all, we're in the middle of an event. Oh man, Prime is too funny, dude. And he continues on, he's like, which means the rules on time and continuity are a bit tricky. Because we all know what's gonna happen, right? At some point in time, when it really matters, Lois is gonna lose her powers again. And we'll have this moment of, oh no, what will they do now? But Prime is like, listen, we gotta go and we gotta go now. But Lois, she doesn't want to leave yet because, she was just talking to Laura. She was just about to find out, she just found out some really crucial information, right? And all the information that's there, all the archives, she's trying to preserve it so that, of course, Clark will be able to see it and hear it later. But in her saying that, she mentions the tournament. So when Superboy is like, hold on for a second, like, what tournament are you talking about? But what that leads us into here is this conversation between Lex Luthor and Superman. And ultimately, what we're gonna find out here is how exactly these supervillains escaped the Phantom Zone that they were supposed to go into, or that Mr. Terrific had put them in, at least he thought. So the conversation here starts off with Lex saying, after everything that we went through together, you didn't think to come to me. I know that we've had our disagreements, our feuds, but this is the end of the world that we're talking about. Darkseid seeks to bring the end of everything, and yet you still couldn't trust me, Superman? He didn't say that last part, I just added that in there. But he's like, you tried to lock us up, hide us away, like we were only part of the problem and never the solution. You and the Justice League took away our choice. Imagine what this could have been if you came to us and asked us to help. So instead of being on the same team, we must compete with each other. You have your people and I have mine. But he does also mention this. He's like, I'm surprised that you decided to go through with it, to be honest. That you, of all people, would allow the creation of a death tournament. But then he says to Supes, he's like, but with all that being said, I am happy to see you. But Superman got one question. He's like, why, Luthor? To which Lex is like, because I want you to witness my victory. But then Clark has this question again. He's like, Terrific sent you to the Phantom Zone. We had a plan. How did you do it? How exactly did you escape? To which Lex is like, you're smart enough to know the saying about gods and plans, right? So what this does here is that this brings us back to about a week ago, right when they were making the plans prior to the start here of the DC tournament. And what we find out here is that while they were making these plans, Grodd was telepathically here communicating with Lex Luthor, because we see Grodd where he mentions, he's like, you hearing this? And on the other side, we see Lex where he's like, yep, I heard every single word. And thankfully, you've maintained our mental connection over the years. Now, Lex, he suspected like something like this was on its way, but the question that he asks is why? To which Grodd is like, bro, that doesn't really matter. The heroes are building a plan whether your old buddy in blue likes it or not. The Justice League are going to work together to throw everyone that they don't like into the Phantom Zone. They say it's to protect us, but it's really because they don't want us to enter this tournament of theirs. To which Lex is like, all right, well, I guess we better plan ahead. So what we see happen next here is where Mr. Terrific was, transporting all of these villains, at least he thought, to the Phantom Zone. But that's not where they end up getting transported to. Instead, they end up teleporting here to their old lair, the Legion of Doom lair, or hideout, whichever one you want to call it. And Lex mentions here how it was an old trick that they used back in their Injustice days. As far as the Justice League knows, they are in the Phantom Zone. And due to Lex having advanced warning, he was able to redirect some of Terrific's T-spheres to here instead. But ultimately, it's only going to buy them some time, but it's just enough. To which King Shark's like, to do what? And that's when he tells them what's going on. He's like, the Justice League is trying to capture a weapon called the Heart of Apocalypse. To do so, they need to enter a tournament and prove to themselves that they can be ruthless, to not hold back, to show no mercy. In short, they need to show that they can be us. The man's got a point. And if that is the only way that they can save the world, ultimately they're going to fail. And at some point, they are going to hesitate. They will show mercy, and how the winner has the opportunity to defeat Darkseid and to fix the world. And who better to fix the world? And if you think he was gonna say, it's us. Nah, that's not what he said. He was like, then me. Oh my gosh, man. Lex is just too much, dude. So Cheetah, she gets all riled up. She's like, it's always about you, isn't it, Lex? To which Lex is like, you really think that you'll win, Cheetah? But when she goes on to lash That's not the right word, but either way, you get the point. She goes to attack Lex here. There's a voice that comes in and starts laughing. And when we turn around to see who it is none other than the Joker. And he's like, Lex. You and me back at it again, just like old times. Shall we stab each other in the back now? I'm telling you, this comic issue is funny. And then he's like, or should we wait until the end of the tournament? But then Lex is like, listen, man, stop all that noise. He's like, enough with this. This group will infiltrate the tournament and win. Simple strategy, Joker. Not everything need be chaos. So when Starro asks a question like, wait, so like, how are we even getting into this tournament and where exactly is it? To which Lex is like, it's in the center of the earth. The league is taking a nexus to Skartaris. Man, I probably just butchered that name. My bad, y'all. Y'all gotta forgive me. My Jamaican accent, sometimes it kicks in. But either way, he mentions that as a gateway. So naturally, they're like, okay, like, you're crazy, my guy. Like, how exactly are we gonna be able to get through that without, of course, anyone seeing them? To which Lex is like, well, we'll have to be smarter. And that is when we see here Lex and the whole crew of villains right now with him, that they got some war suits on. And I'm like, listen, man, maybe I want to be a villain just so I can get one of them suits. And he tells everybody, he's like, prepare to enter the Nexus. And as we see them traveling through, we hear once again Lex, or we see Lex talking to Superman. He's like, you want to know why I will win this, Superman? It has nothing to do with how strategic I can be. And it's not just because I can go to the depths of my soul far past anything that you're capable of. It's about sacrifice. I have no problem with my allies falling on the field of battle. They can all die as far as I care. And the thing that is going to really get under your skin is some of your friends are going to start to see it my way. So Superman's like, all right, man, that's enough. I've had enough of that crap. I don't care what happens next. You are not winning. To which Lex is like, you can't see your biggest weakness, Clark. You care. Which goes back again to that same conversation, that same theme that they keep on showing us here with Superman. And Les continues, he's like, not just about the people here, you're distracted by what is happening outside as well. But what we see here next is this thing that kind of gives us an opening or a preview to some of the matchups that are going to happen here. As the words say, here you must do battle. Best 2 out of 3. The winner is 1 step closer to the power to defeat Darkseid. As we see here a preview of what is supposed to be Superman versus Captain Atom, and then we also see a preview here of Lex Luthor versus the Demon, with the words here under that are carved in what looks like fire that say 8. But then we pick back up here on Prime and Lois, as Prime is asking the question, a death tournament? And he's like, man, I can't believe that there's a death tournament and I'm missing it. He's like, yo, I should totally be in it. I'd kill everybody, punching heads off left and right. To which Lois is like, I thought you were done killing people, my boy. To which he's like, all right, hold on for a second here. I'm just saying that I could do it, not that I will do it. But then this man, he says this, he's like, you have any idea how OP I am? I'm a power scaler's dream, and I love a good tournament arc. And I gotta say, I love Superboy-Prime's arc in this entire story. This is great. But Lois, she's focusing here on the task at hand. She's like, we need to figure out how to get the lost archives here to Clark. He needs to know the truth about Doomsday's creation. But then it's in that moment here where Superboy-Prime, he gets this idea. He's like, I totally realize where we are, and I think I got an idea. So with that, he flies off. And as soon as that happens, there's a voice that comes in right behind Lois. And it's the voice of Sunboy, because now he just woke up after getting his ass knocked out. But then in addition to him now, we also see 2 other members here of Darkseid's Legion. And Sunboy's like, how about you join us, Superwoman? Your best chance of survival is to pledge yourself to Darkseid. You can prove your loyalty by killing the multiverse brat. Because they know truly that Superwoman is their only chance of actually being able to beat Superboy-Prime. Now, naturally, of course, Lois is like, yeah, I'm not finna do that. Then, of course, naturally, they're like, oh no, you will die as well. So Lois is like, Prime, where the heck are you? To which Prime is like, hold on for a second. And homeboy better hurry, because Sunboy, he goes over here to Lara and he's like, these Kryptonian archives are a threat to the final god. They must burn. But Lois is like, no, you can't do that. And then right in the nick of time, we see Superboy-Prime. And then we also see Clark with him. And what that does here is that evens the odds. It also motivates Lois because she's like, you brought my husband back to me. But she does have a question. She's like, how exactly did you find him? To which Prime is like, I'll explain it after we're done dealing with this group. So Clark, he goes on slashing, he goes on beaming, Lois using her freeze breath. Yes, I'm calling all these things wrong, but you know what I'm talking about. But then after the battle is done, Superboy-Prime is like, yo, quick. We gotta move. These Legion, they're like damn cockroaches. You stomp one out and like a dozen take their place. And if we're getting these archives, we need to get them now. But then once again, Lois got questions. She's like, what exactly is going on here, Prime? And she's asking Clark, she's like, what happened in the tournament? Where is everyone else? Bruce, Diana, Kara, like, where's everybody? And then when she goes to place her hand on her shoulder, when he turns around, you can see that shocked look on her face. She's like, oh my God. Because what we see here is a cyborg-faced Superman. So Lois, she gets ready to clock back. I said clock back, I meant cock back. But Prime stops her and he's like, chill out for a second. He's not Cyborg Superman. He's one of the robots that Clark made a long time ago. And if we want to get the truth about Doomsday and Darkseid to the real Superman, we need to get him to Time Trapper, who, as we see right now, is getting yoked up here by Booster Gold. Because if you remember now, what we found out here in DCKO issue #1 is that Darkseid, he has taken control here of Booster Gold. So that's not really Booster Gold anymore. But listen, what did y'all think here? Superwoman, Lois getting her powers back here. Superboy-Prime showing up with all these different cyborg, I'm kidding, these other Supermen. I thought about here what Lex Luthor has done to bring the DC villains back here into the DC tournament. Leave it down below in the comments. Also, if you have not caught up here on the Superman story, check out the list down below. Also, if you haven't kept up with DCKO, we did also cover that here on the channel as well, both issues. Don't forget to leave a like here on this video, subscribe if you're brand new to the channel. Check out our links that are down below in the description where you can join our Discord, where we can keep the conversation going. We appreciate you guys so much. And as always, thank you so much for kicking it with Keepin' It Comic. Bye.